Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking something absolutely massive, the system architecture that powers the data plane for giants like YouTube, Meta, and Netflix. We are talking about event ingestion. It's the architectural backbone that handles literally billions of interactions without so much as breaking a sweat. It's an incredibly fascinating structural marvel, and honestly, I am so excited to just jump right in and show you exactly how it all works under the hood. Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to imagine something for a second. Every single time a YouTube thumbnail flashes onto your screen, even for, say, half a second, even if you just scroll right past it, that is logged as an impression. Now multiply that single event by 2.7 billion monthly users. Then multiply it again by every video on every single page they visit. You are looking at a fire hose of millions of events per second, sustained 24/7 across the entire planet. So how exactly does a system absorb all of that without losing data, making the user wait, or, completely melting the database? To really understand the solution here, we actually have to undergo a bit of a mindset shift. It's not about grabbing the hottest new technology off the shelf. It's all about access patterns. And for event ingestion, the access pattern is brutal, but it's uniform. It's incredibly write-heavy, with just massive volume. The data is semi-structured, it's append-only, and honestly, individual events, they don't matter that much. Losing one impression is totally fine, but losing 1% of them, that's a complete catastrophe. On the flip side, reads are basically zero until much later, when they become these massive aggregate scans over wide time ranges. Recognizing this asymmetry, well, that's the key to everything we're about to discuss. So here is our roadmap. We're going to cover the scale problem and naive failure, the local wall keystone, decoupling with Kafka, hot and cold tiering, surviving failure, and wrap it up with 5 universal principles. Section 1, the scale problem and the naive failure. So the intuitive first design most of us reach for is to simply have the web server write events directly to a transactional database, like MySQL or Postgres. And look, this works perfectly fine for small apps or internal tools, but it hits an absolute brick wall at around 10,000 events per second. Why? Because you're using a transactional database for a non-transactional workload. Every single insert requires parsing, planning, acquiring a row lock, writing to a redo log, doing an fsync. You are paying this massive performance tax for ACID safety guarantees that a simple impression log fundamentally just does not need. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact moment the system breaks. Best case scenario, a database write takes, maybe 5 milliseconds? But at scale, your database P99 latency can easily spike to 50 milliseconds or more. And because your HTTP handler is waiting on that database write synchronously, a slow database stalls your request thread. If you're getting 1 million events a second, you suddenly need tens of thousands of concurrent database connections. The database exhausts its connections, the HTTP servers back up, and boom, the entire ingestion pipeline goes offline and you're getting paged at 3 a.m. Section 2, the local wall keystone. If we can't write synchronously over the network to a database, where do we write? The answer is the local write-ahead log, or WAL. Instead of forwarding events anywhere over the network, each edge HTTP server writes them to a local file on its own disk in append mode. When that file reaches a certain size, say 64 megabytes, it's closed out and a new one is opened. Now, if you're writing this in production in Go, this means managing file rotation with really tight mutexes and making smart trade-offs about when to actually trigger an OS fsync. This is incredibly fast. A modern NVMe SSD can handle sequential appends at 1 to 3 gigabytes per second. You will literally saturate your network card long before you saturate your local disk. If you want a great mental model for this, think of a slammed restaurant. The waiter, that's our HTTP handler, doesn't walk every single individual order all the way back to the chef. That would be wildly inefficient. Instead, the waiter pins the ticket to a rail. That rail is our local wall. Then the chef, which in our system is a background process called a batcher, takes those tickets in batches and cooks them. We have completely decoupled the fast job of capturing the event from the much slower job of processing it downstream. The absolute magic here is decoupling write acknowledgement from write durability. By absorbing the data spikes right there on the edge disk, your HTTP server can respond to the client in microseconds. It doesn't matter if the downstream database is lagging, performing an upgrade, or just completely offline. The local disk absorbs all that back pressure. Now yes, if the server loses power before an OS fsync, you might lose a few milliseconds of data. But remember our access pattern? For an analytics workload where losing a fraction of a percent is totally acceptable, this trade-off gives you 1,000 times throughput boost. It's a no-brainer. Section 3, decoupling with Kafka. So Kafka acts as our transport bus, absorbing the batches from those edge hosts. But there is a massive trap here that catches almost everyone, and that's partitioning. Say you partition your Kafka topic by the video ID. Sounds logical, right? All events for one video go to one partition. But then Mr. Beast drops a new video. 50 million impressions hit a single partition in the first hour. That partition's consumer falls hours behind, while the other 99 partitions sit there totally idle. This is the classic hot partition trap. For event ingestion, you should actually partition randomly. Sure, you lose per video ordering, but for impression analytics, we don't care about order. Similarly, we have to look at how we route traffic to our edge hosts in the first place. You might be tempted to use sticky load balancing, where a user always hits the exact same backend server. Do not do this. Sticky load balancing is the wrong default here. Event ingestion is completely stateless from the client's perspective. Stickiness just causes uneven load distribution, like when a viral creator's audience suddenly pins a massive wave of traffic to a single backend, and it makes deploying updates a total nightmare. Default to stateless, non-sticky load balancing. Uniform load is your absolute best friend at this scale. Because we're randomly partitioning and using non-sticky routing, events are going to arrive at their final destination completely out of order, and that is perfectly fine. The principle here is to let the data carry its own time. The event payload itself contains the timestamp. Mathematical aggregations like counts, sums, unique user metrics, they're commutative. They don't care what order the data arrives in. Bottlenecking your entire system just to enforce strict ordering for a simple count is an enormous, totally unnecessary cost.
Section 4. Hot and cold tiering.
So where does all this data actually live long-term? We split our storage into 2 tiers, which can actually result in a massive 100x cost reduction. Hot, recent data goes into a columnar OLAP database, something like ClickHouse. Because ClickHouse stores data column by column rather than row by row, and it compresses highly repetitive data perfectly, it can chew through billions of rows in milliseconds. It's why columnar wins for analytics. But hot storage is expensive, so a background job routinely takes aged-out data from ClickHouse and dumps it into S3 object storage. S3 is our cold tier. It's slower to read, but it's literally a fraction of the cost. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the trick to protecting that slow, cold storage from ruining our query speeds. Just look at the latency math here. A cold lookup in S3 takes about 100 milliseconds. If you blindly query hot storage, miss, and then check cold storage, your misses take 105 milliseconds. But by adding a tiny, cheap index server, using something like a Bloom filter, in front of the cold store, it can instantly tell you if the data even exists in S3 at all. This completely prevents you from paying that expensive 100 millisecond cold lookup penalty on missing data. It pays for itself literally immediately. Section 5. Surviving failure. At billion scale, failure isn't a possibility, it is a 100% guarantee. A principal engineer always maintains a failure modes catalog. You have to know the blast radius before the incident even happens. If an edge disk fills up, that host rejects writes, so we mitigate with aggressive batching and quotas. If the batcher is slow, Kafka falls behind real time, so we auto-scale those batchers based on lag metrics. If a Kafka broker dies, a partition goes unavailable, so we run across multiple availability zones and ensure our producers retry. The mantra here is, what does it look like when it breaks? How will I know in 60 seconds via my observability stack, using tight SLOs, distributed tracing and metrics, and what is my exact path to recovery?
And of course, sometimes the failure is intentional, meaning an attack. Ingestion endpoints are massive targets for DDoS attacks, so your defense has to be layered. You drop obvious attack traffic right at the CDN edge. You enforce per IP rate limits at the load balancer. You use token bucket throttling inside the application to smooth out those aggressive bursts. And you enforce strict request body size caps, so an attacker can't just send massive payloads to fill up your local wall. You have to fail fast on bad input and degrade gracefully on overload.
Section 6. The 5 Universal Principles. So the crucial point is that these 5 rules generalize to almost all distributed systems. 1. Decouple write acknowledgement from durability using tools like a local wall. 2. Match your storage tier to your access pattern. Hot for recent, cold for old. 3. Convert synchronous network calls to asynchronous work whenever your service level objectives allow. 4. Make your pipelines replayable, like we do with Kafka, because recovery without data loss absolutely requires it. And 5. Design for the tail. The viral spike, the regional outage. The median case is easy. The tail is what defines a truly robust architecture. And that brings us to the end of our journey through billion-scale event ingestion. We've seen how pushing state to the edge, embracing asynchronous transport, and tiering our storage allows giants like YouTube to handle the unimaginable. But look, these aren't just parlor tricks for massive tech companies. They are fundamental engineering philosophies. So as you look at your own projects, I'll leave you with this. How will you apply these 5 principles to the distributed system you build next? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep building.